This is the video of my new Protea garden, highlighting some of the things I've learned along the way. Before I get to the new garden, this is video of my original garden planted in 2015 with 8 leucospermum planted. I had read that Proteas like good drainage, so I made the planting holes extra large and amended the soil with pumice and sand for better drainage. This is the garden 1 year later, and then 2 years later. As you can see, I have some beautiful flowers from the plants. This is a leucospermum high gold, one of my favorites, and this is leucospermum flame giant. But at this point, half of the leucospermums planted had already died. Here's the garden 3 years after planting, and now we're down to just one leucospermum left, the flame giant. All the other leucospermums had died, and unfortunately soon after, this flame giant also died. So what happened? When I originally amended the soil when I planted, thinking it would help drainage, the reality is that it didn't make a difference. If you plant in a flat area, as I originally did, the soil drainage is determined by the drainage of the whole area. So you live in an area with poor drainage, amending the soil won't make a difference. The cycle of death for the Mediterranean plant is that the roots die in the winter, rainy season, if you have poor drainage, and then the plant dies in the summer at the first exposure to heat, when there are no roots left to sustain the plant. The only way to get guaranteed drainage is to elevate your plants. Many of the professional Protea growers grow on hillsides to get excellent drainage, as you can see here. So I did an experiment. My brother lives only a few miles away. He had a large raised mound needing a plant, so I planted a leucospermum tango there. This is a plant 1 year after planting. Tango is such a beautiful plant. This is a plant 3 years after planting. And here's a plant today, 4 years after planting and going strong. It has such beautiful flowers. The trunk is the size of my forearm, just huge. So we have a plant which couldn't survive planted in a flat area, but is thriving planted on a mound. Unfortunately, I live in an area thick with eucalyptus trees and consequently a lot of shade. So I didn't have an area for a new Protea garden until this happened. A cyclone bomb hit Sacramento last October, dropping the most rainfall ever recorded in a 24-hour period since 1880. 5.5 inches of rainfall, causing flooding. You can hear the rain here. The next morning, I woke up to see that a huge eucalyptus tree had fallen down, tearing the sidewalk. Here you can see my wife standing along the tree. So I got a tree company out to cut the tree down. Next, a stump grinder the size of my car to get rid of the tree stump. I then noticed another eucalyptus tree leaning over, so I had a friend cut it down. I was now left with a new open area. I thought, I can put in a new Protea garden. What weird luck. So maybe the tree coming down was a good thing. The next step was to remove the old concrete with a jackhammer, then hire a concrete guy, here putting up forms, then pouring cement using a cement pump, and finally the area was ready. I then added about 30 wheelbarrows or 2 yards of topsoil to make a nice mound for my new Protea garden. Here's my brand new Protea garden. It's 15 by 22 feet and the central mound's about 2 feet high. I did bring in 2 yards of topsoil to build this mound up. There's 17 plants planted here, and most are leucospermums that I really like, but I did plant a few other species that I like. All the plants were planted in the last month, and the smaller plants were purchased from nurseries in the Berkeley area, while the larger plants in the back were grown by seed from me, and they're about 6 years old. Here's another view of the garden to show you the good drainage. Next, I'd like to talk about each plant, why I picked it out, and why you might also want to have it in your garden. The first plant I'd like to share with you is a plant called Phylica pubescens. It's also from South Africa, and it grows among the Protea plants. It's also known as featherhead. I was at the Flowerland Nursery in Berkeley, and they had one of these planted in the ground. And I was just mesmerized by the beauty of this plant, and I said, wow, I gotta get one of these. Of course, they were sold out, and I called a number of other nurseries in the area, and they were also sold out. I then called Crescent Hill Nursery in Monterey, and he had 3 of these. He's an actual grower of these plants, a wholesaler. So I met him in Napa at a garden show, and he sold me 3 of these, and boy, was I happy to get my hands on one. Let's get a little closer at this plant, and you can see how beautiful it is. The leaves on this plant are soft and silky, and in the evening, when the sunlight shines through the leaves, it has a golden glow, which is just stunning. This plant can grow to about 4 to 6 feet tall. Definitely consider getting this plant for your Protea garden. Here's what a mature phylica pubescens looks like. Really stunning plant. And then this is what it looks like when the sun shines through it in the evening. This plant here is a banksia, Banksia petiolaris. Banksias are from Australia, and they're related to Proteas. This is a low-growing banksia, and it sort of creeps along the ground. I grew this plant from seed, and it's about 5 years old now. It has a beautiful flower forming now, and these flowers can last up to 6 months. Here's one of my all-time favorite leucospermums named high gold. And as you can see, it's a beautiful plant with gorgeous yellow flowers. The reason I like this plant so much is that the stems are very erect and don't droop. So when you cut the stem, it's perfect for a vase. And for that reason, it's used in the cut flower trade. I love this plant so much, I planted 2 of these. There's this one here, and then there's another one I'll show you in a second. Next, I'd like to just do a close-up of the flower for you. Here's a close-up of the flower. Stunning yellow color. Here's the other high gold I planted. When I purchased it, it didn't have any flower buds, so there are no flowers. But if you look closely, you'll see there's a good 3 inches of new growth on the plant. So it's a very happy plant planted on this raised mound. Here's another all-time favorite of mine, leucospermum flame giant, which is similar to the high gold, but it's a red version, and it has just gorgeous red flowers. These are fairly easy to find, and I would recommend you get one. I have a flame giant growing by my kitchen. This gives you an idea of what a mature plant would look like with gorgeous red flowers. Here's a plant I'm really excited about, leucospermum reflexum luteum, or also known as a rocket pincushion. When I was in the Bay Area, I actually found one for sale and I couldn't believe it, so I snatched it up. They're very, very hard to find. This plant here is the yellow version, and this is what a mature form looks like. As you can see, the flowers reflex back down. They also make a red version, which is pretty cool also, as you can see here. This plant is supposed to be more hardy than your normal leucospermum and easier to grow. So we'll see how this plant turns out. Here is leucospermum tango, plant with gorgeous red flowers. Easily available at most nurseries that sell leucospermums. This plant is pretty much finished blooming, but it did have these 2 red flowers on here that were very beautiful. Here's a picture of one at my brother's house that has been growing for 4 or 5 years. It's a very large specimen, doing really well. Highly recommended. This is leucospermum helena, or also known as goldfinger. This plant was developed by the University of Hawaii Protea Research Project. I have this plant and another plant, both from that project. This plant is a cross between reflexum, which you've seen earlier, and other hybrids. So when the flower opens, it opens larger, but it doesn't reflex down. Since the blooms have opened since I purchased it, I'm really impressed with the beauty of this flower. This flower has an unusual orange tinge, which is quite beautiful. I've never really seen anything like it before. So I'm really happy I purchased this hybrid. This is leucospermum blanche Ito. This is another plant from the University of Hawaii Protea Research Project, and this plant is also half reflexum. This is a plant I've been searching for a while. I've seen pictures of it on the internet, and I was pretty blown away by how this plant looks. Kind of different than some of the other leucospermums. and it has a deep red color, at least from what I've seen on the internet. I couldn't find any for sale, and when I went to Napa to pick up my phylica pubescens, Crescent Hill Nursery had 4 of these, and I couldn't believe it. What luck! So I picked up this plant and put it in the ground. One thing unusual about this plant is it has a red stem, which is very unusual. I'm not sure I've seen that before. That may go along with it having the red flowers. Here are some pictures of it I found on the internet to give you an idea of what this plant looks like. Deep red flowers, and kind of opened up quite a bit because of the reflexum in the plant. This is Banksia coccinea, another banksia in my garden. This is also known as the scarlet banksia, and it's considered the most attractive of all the banksia species. It grows in Western Australia in almost pure sand. This plant is highly susceptible to dieback from Phytopthora cinnamoni. A lot of them have been dying in Australia. I grew this plant from seed, and it's about 6 years old. I've never seen this plant for sale anywhere, so if you want one, you're probably going to have to grow it from seed. I planted a second one of my Banksia coccinea on the ground on the very top of this mound to get the best drainage. Hard to believe, but this plant is actually older than the other plant. For some reason, it just started growing very, very slowly. These plants are very hard to grow in the garden because they need insanely good drainage, and also because of the dieback problem. Here are some pictures of Banksia coccinea, a stunning white and red flower. Very unusual looking. They're just gorgeous. I personally have never seen a flower, and I'm really anticipating when my plants might finally bloom. This is really like a shrub. As I said, it grows in the sand, and it's out in Western Australia. This is leucadendron maui sunset. It's a hybrid developed in Hawaii, and it is a beautiful plant. This plant did flower, but it's now past its prime. Here's what a mature plant looks like in flower. Stunning peachy tinge and a striking pale yellow head. This is leucadendron tinctum, also known as the spicy cone bush. This is one of the few leucadendrons that has a odor to it, and it is a spicy odor. It's pleasant. I grew this plant from seed, and it's about 6 years old. It's past its prime in terms of blooming, but I find the leaves and the structure of the plant to be very beautiful. I've never seen this for sale in any nursery, so if you want one, you'll probably have to grow it from seed. Here are some pictures from last year, so you can see what the flowers look like at their peak. This is Hakea victoria. Hakea are in the Proteaceae family, and these grow in Western Australia along the Banksia coccinea. It's also known as the royal hakea. They have sharp, serrated, leathery leaves, which turn yellow, orange, and red. They're really known for their foliage, and the secret is, how do you get the leaves to turn those colors? I have yet to figure that out. I am told that they need soil with almost no nutrients in it to stress the plant out to turn color. So it's possible my soil just has too many nutrients and I'll never get that beautiful color. I grew this plant from seed, and it's about 5 years old. Never seen it for sale in any nurseries. This is what the plant looks like in the wild. Stunning red, orange, and yellow leaves. It grows as a bush in open habitat. I wish I knew how to get my plant to turn color like these leaves, but I'm not sure it'll ever happen. Here are 2 leucospermums I grew from seed. This is leucospermum Catherine, also known as the wheel pincushion, and leucospermum gueinzii. Neither are in bloom right now, but they do have buds and should be blooming shortly. Here's a beautiful bud right here. Here is video of leucospermum Catherine blooming last year. You can see the beautiful yellow flowers. This flower does look like a wheel. And here's leucospermum gueinzii flowering last year. The Protea weather cycle is they get their rain in the winter, and the summers are fairly dry with low humidity and mild temperatures, a Mediterranean climate, like we have here in Sacramento. But Sacramento tends to have hotter summers than they have where they naturally grow with our temperatures over 100. So I need to supplement their water in the summer, and a drip system is the best way to go, as they don't really want water on their leaves. They'd rather have it just to their roots. You need to install a shutoff valve to whatever system you're hooking up to, as I've done here. From the shutoff valve, we go to a 1/2-inch PVC pipe. From the PVC pipe, we then go to a pressure reducer. And from that, we go to 1/2-inch tubing for the drip system. As you can see here, the 1/2-inch pipe runs along close to all the plants. And from the 1/2-inch pipe, we then run 1/4-inch pipe to the plant, where then the bubbler is installed. This is what the drip system looks like when it's turned on. With 2 of these bubblers, you get great coverage over the entire plant. So those are the plants I planted in my Protea garden. I forgot to mention that I planted these plants about 4 feet apart. I'm going to have to actively keep them trimmed to keep the spacing correct. I plan to water them about 10 to 20 minutes, 3 times a week, depending on the heat conditions. I amend them with iron sulfate. It helps to acidify the soil. I also plan to add about 3 to 4 inches of a cedar mulch to keep the ground nice and cool and keep the weeds out. I plan to do some follow-up videos on this garden to see how they do on this nice big mound that I built. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. The names of all the plants in my garden are listed in the description below.